if you have any of your tech needs, please reach out to Kerry. He's there for all of you to assist and to help. Any other bucket fills for Lisa or Tony that you wanted to mention for anyone before I get off of that topic? Shout outs? No? Okay. Oh, by the way, speaking of shout outs, I think Jen is on here too. Jen will, she's an incoming PB. We're just waiting for that DCCA record to take effect, but she's doing a fantastic job at really, you know, being there, even though she's not the PB of record as of yet. She's very knowledgeable, very experienced. I think she's on here too, but if anything that you need, she is more than happy to help in terms of coaching you up or on the contracts or policies and standards and so forth. So thank you, Jen, for all that you do there. December, we had some cappers, and a shout out to Max. Max, this is his first time he capped, which is unbelievable. I'm so proud of him. Max is also going to be sitting on the ALC for the first time in 2021, which I am super, super excited for. So great job, Max. Congratulations, earning 100% of your own commission now. That's fantastic. Patty Case capped as well, so give her a congratulations when you see her. So did Jeff Steinley. All good stuff. Family reunion is coming up. I can't believe it. I feel like we just had Mega Camp, and family reunion is coming up. Family reunion is going to be in February. Please try to attend. It's so inexpensive now. In years past, family reunion used to cost, gosh, I don't know, $2,500 to maybe even $3,000 because of airfare and the registration and the hotel and all the food and all that other kind of stuff. And it was well worth it. Absolutely well worth it. This is by far and away Keller Williams' most largest event that they hold each year. So well worth it, but now it's entirely digital and it's super inexpensive. And I think, I want to say, Lisa, you looked into this. Was it 109? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
$109, yeah.
8 p.m. Hawaii time. Yesterday was 109. I'm not sure what it is now, but it's still a deal.
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely, and it's 3 days long. However, you know, even if you're swamped and you're busy and you can't make time for the entire 3 days, which is understandable, even if you could make time for a couple of hours or a few hours a day, that would be super helpful. There's so much to learn, best practices from top producing people throughout the country. I believe, like they did in Mega Camp, they're going to record it so you can go back and watch it again. But Mega Camp had record numbers. I think there was 65,000. Something like that attended Mega Camp. I'm guessing that if I'm putting a bet out there, I'm going to guess that family reunion at minimum is probably going to have 85,000, if not more than 100,000 attendees. It's going to be huge. So I really hope that you guys can try to attend because it's going to be absolutely worthwhile. Tons of training, tons of there's going to be talks by Gary Keller and Josh Team and about command and everything else. Also check out the most recent edition of Outfront magazine. They have great articles that are for the moment that I find super helpful. There's a link down at the bottom there, outfront.kw.com, 15 ways to reconnect with your sphere during the holidays, which I think is super helpful. And obviously you don't have to have the magazine itself. You can click on the actual link or the app. MREA Book Club. Jay Papasan, which is the co-author with Gary Keller on the MREA, as well as a bunch of other books too. Pivot, the Facebook group, Shift Ahead, they have book club, so they're reading the MREA. I definitely recommend that you jump on something. You don't have to be on that specifically, but if you're not doing things for growth, I mean, we just finished 2020. We are now headed into 2021. I don't know if you guys hit your goals or you didn't hit your goals, but even if you did, then you should have already set your 2021 goals, which should be larger than your 2020 goals. And if you don't do growth activities, and that could be reading books and having a coach, you know, listening to certain podcasts. I know Tony is all about a ton of different podcasts that he turns me on to all the time and tells me to listen to. So if you're not in a growth mindset, how can you expect to do more in 2021? So definitely try to participate in as much as you can. Some new things, just I'm giving you kind of updates before we get started on some things, but Command, there's a whole Command onboarding section, guided tours, which will help you get better acquainted with Command, because Command now, I think Command now is 4 years old, if I'm not mistaken. And it's been ramped up substantially in the last 12 months. I think the biggest changes in growth in Command has been in the last 12 months, not the entire 4 years. But there's a ton of new things in there. So as you guys know, Command is part of when you're a KW agent, and Command is an award-winning CRM platform that is far, far, far better than anything else that's out there. But you got to dive in and you got to use it. And that's what KWRI's here for. That's what I'm here for. That's what Lisa for her people are here for. So just ask us questions and we'll get you to the right place. Also, there's new templates. So one of the things about Command that makes it great is it makes it easy for you with smart plans and these kind of things. So with smart plans, you can stay in touch with your clients via email and via text message. So you can text your clients without you texting it. It can be set up on an auto smart plan. So you can have a touch campaign and reach out to them, 2 or 3. I wouldn't recommend 2 or 3 times a month if it's meaningless, but you can reach out to them as often as you want throughout the whole year for various different things, whether it's holidays or happy birthdays or home anniversaries or whatever it is. Definitely use that system, lean in that system. This has already ended on December 31st, but eEdge, I'm not sure. I think we only had a couple of people that were really using eEdge, but eEdge is now gone bye-bye. And quite frankly, that's fine, because eEdge was really an antiquated system. Command is not even, they're not even in the same ballpark. So hopefully, if you guys had eEdge, you've already converted to Command. If you don't even know what I'm referring to, maybe it's because you've already in Command and you didn't use eEdge. That's fine as well. There's a ton of new designs in Command. There's the Happy Holidays. There is Happy New Year's stuff. If you haven't already sent out New Year's emails to your client and your database and your sphere, do it. And if you need help, it's, as you can see right along the side here, it's an applet that's in Command. So ask me, ask KWRI. We're happy to help. COVID. So here's some. I saw this map and I thought it was pretty interesting. You could check this out. Further information on New York Times website, but there are some areas in the country where businesses are either closed or somewhat locked down. The map on the upper left-hand corner is referring to businesses. Masks required is this map here, and then the stay-at-home orders are right here, which we are not. We don't have restrictions. California just recently, I think last month, went on a curfew, as well as you can see, Ohio and a couple of other areas too. But we're lucky in our state not to be hit that heavily, that hard, or as hard as the mainland. But some of the concerns, I think, with the government was over the holidays, as people get together and gather, if other people would get sick. And so here's ours. We're still in tier 2. And Tony and I were talking over the weekend. Feel free to chime in, Tony, if you want. Is our numbers are kind of creeping up a little bit, and who knows? I mean, it could, if it dies down, I mean, we could kind of stay in tier 2 for a little while. But I think Tony mentioned it was at 4.1 or 4.2. Is that right, Tony?
Yeah, 4.1. I get my information as I drive along the freeway. Sometimes it's not consistent, but as of yesterday, it was 4.1.
So 4.1 is creeping closer to tighter restrictions and maybe backing into tier 1. It just really depends. But this is where we are. This is as of let's see, as of 12:30, so about a week old. But Tony, we don't want to restrict business and everything else. So we have rules in place for tenants that rent space here. There's certain maximum occupancy per office here. So if you need a place to work, we actually have space available. So we sent an email out the other last week. So feel free to call me if you are interested in renting space. But we will open up during business hours only the training area for a maximum, because that space is large enough where we can space everyone out. So a maximum of 15 people. Conference rooms can be used by appointment only. You still have to, I don't know if you guys have been here recently, there's some people that that come in every now and again to pick up checks or what have you, but you got to sign in, you got to complete a COVID disclosure. We just want to make sure that we keep everyone safe. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we try our best to allow you to use as much resources and tools and everything else as we have available. So, you know, if that number creeps up and it goes back down to tier 1, while the office people will still be able to stay here, we might have to remove the function of people coming into the market center and the training area. We don't know. We're playing it by ear. Again, we just want to keep everyone as safe as possible. Tony, do you want to add anything to that?
You know, if they go back into tier 1, you know, we'll have to take different measures, but for the moment, you know, we'll set up the training room sort of like a restaurant. You know, we'll have it safe so that everybody can feel comfortable. If you're sitting at a table, not anybody's going to be close next to you. And that can change as long as we stay under 5%. You know, we'll do our best to welcome people back to the office. It's been such a long time and we don't want people to feel that they don't have a place to go to. So do feel free to come, you know, to start coming in as of tomorrow.
And when Tony says we're going to treat it like a restaurant, what he means is he's going to be serving appetizers and liquor, and he will have a soup of the day. So we look forward to seeing what that soup of the day looks like.
Just bring your own plates and
yeah.
those, right? You know.
No, but you know, in all seriousness, though, we still want to make sure people are safe. So we don't want to have people walking around the office without masks on, and thinking that it's kind of back to normal, because it really is not back to normal. But we want to try to get as close to the synergy and the interaction that we had. So that, especially if it helps your mental health, and it also helps your business, because sometimes we need to have that interaction with other top producing people and to bounce ideas off of people and so forth. So we're all here for you. And speaking of mental health, by the way, we have monthly mindset. I think that's coming up on Friday, I believe. That is with a local therapist that helps with mindset stuff. And I don't know any other company that has an actual therapist that is available for a class like that for their employees, or in this case, agents. So please take advantage of that. We would love for you guys to attend. There's so many different classes that we have that I know that people get a little zoomed out, but also know too that this is our new reality to some extent. We absolutely can incorporate more. We can absorb more information. You just have to schedule it and plan everything out. There's a ton of resources available for you through KW if you grab onto it. So please do that. So KWRI, and this is also our market center numbers. This is for November. The reason why it's for November, not December, is because December's numbers come out once we transmit. So we're always a little bit behind on those numbers. But this, so you know, this is where we are in comparison to where we were month over month and year to date. So KW, just so you guys know, as a national number or statistic, we've done huge things in 2020. KW, you guys already know that Keller Williams is the #1 real estate firm in the entire world, but we have created, which is something that you should all be proud of, is we've created a larger distance from the #1, #2, #3, #4, #5 in 2020. I mean, we created a lot. The next person that's the #2 and 3 are nowhere near as close to us, you know, right now than they were a year ago. So KW has done tremendous things, not only in technology, but also in branding. We don't really advertise and market, and they're in the middle of a national social media marketing campaign right now. And that's also helped propel us forward. So the reason why I even mention that to you guys is be proud that you're with the largest company and the best company out there. The other thing is social media. If KW, the largest company out there, is partnered with Facebook, which is the largest social media platform out there, and that's how they're getting this message across, definitely use social media. You got to understand it. You got to use it. It's here to stay. It's not a phase or something that's going to die out. We will always try to help direct you in the right direction in terms of what tools to use, but Facebook is definitely one of them, and that's part of that growth. Forbearance. So these are talking about what's happening in the market right now. Forbearance is kind of a topic that is discussed. And I thought it would be worthwhile. And by the way, I'll email the slides out. We're recording this as well, so I can email this out to you guys afterwards. But you guys should understand this just so that you know when clients are asking information about forbearance or what have you. Just know that if you're dealing with a client that is wanting to buy a property and they mention that they're currently in forbearance, that's not going to work. They have to be out of forbearance or satisfied forbearance in order to do that. The best thing to do is kind of educate yourself as to what that process means. And it's not foreclosure, by the way. It's a different thing. But 5 steps to ask a mortgage forbearance due to coronavirus, that's laid out there. More importantly, as an economic indicator, I thought this was interesting as well, which is the national forbearance. If you look on the left, upon exit from the forbearance plan, 54% are paid in full, which is good. 30% work out a repayment plan, so they roll in from forbearance onto some sort of loan modification, and then 14%, unfortunately, are still in trouble. With that said, though, those numbers, these are national numbers, not local, but on a national scale, that's good. That's good because this is nowhere near as it was in 2007, 2008. That was, people were over leveraged in terms of credit use and that sort of thing, and had no equity. Those numbers are not the same now. The number of mortgages in active forbearance is also decreasing too. So if you look here, this is from May. So, right around when we immediately rolled into stay at home and the pandemic, this was probably about 45 to 60 days in, those numbers were pretty high. And this is where we ended up as of the end of November. So that's pretty good. The trend it's trending down. So people, I think, are a lot more responsible and credit conscious and financially responsible than they were in years past. As far as national inventory, so inventory means the amount of homes that are available. And this is pretty consistent too with our own local numbers, which we're going to get into in a second here. But national inventory, if you can look here, the orange is the inventory and the green is the home sale prices. So as supply of inventory goes down, prices go up. That's just, common supply and demand. But these are, although the numbers seem pretty common, I talked to a lot of agents, some with KW, most outside of KW, they don't know how this works. And it's really important, which is why I always say the market of the moment. You have to be an expert of the market of the moment. How else are you going to explain to your clients what's going on right now, what the landscape is right now, what happened last month, last year, and what could possibly happen going forward if you don't understand the market of the moment. So super important stuff. Interest rate correlation to months of inventory. Tony pointed this out yesterday that there's an absolute correlation with this, which is true. So this is 2020 mortgage rates, and this is 2020 mortgage rates from, gosh, I think that's, sorry, I know it's small. I think that's from the entire 2020 from January. So if you look at that and the rates going down, also the supply, the months of inventory follow very similar trend. So this is another thing that's important for you guys to know too, in terms of your dialogue and the words in which you choose to use. Buyer's market, neutral market, seller's market, that's super, super important to understand the meaning of and what that represents. I'll give you an example is, there are a lot, and by the way, it's not a state thing. So it's not as though California is a seller's market or California is a buyer's market. It depends on the community. And even here in Oahu, even being on a small island, Tony and I were talking about the months of inventory. You could have an area, a community that's in Makaha or some parts of Waianae that might be more of a buyer's market, whereas in town, it's an absolute seller's market. So same island, same MLS for that matter, but the months of inventory look differently depending on what community you're looking in. And that's also extremely important when you're talking to a seller who's looking to sell their home, not just give them an answer based upon our MLS or based upon our island, but rather hyper focus on their community, because it's going to create a different expectation on how long it's going to take for them to sell their home. Additionally, when you are working with the buyer, for them to expect, I can find a home and how many offers. Because if you just go, yeah, I'll find your home by this weekend, that's probably not a good expectation if they're looking in town somewhere. What might be a better expectation is to tell them that they might have to write 7, 8, or 9 offers in order for one to be accepted. So we'll get into some of that too, but this is the standard. anything above 7 months is considered a buyer's market. That just simply means that the buyers are more in control in terms of negotiation in that type of market. Neutral market is even. A seller's market is, sorry, I switched here. Seller's market is less than 6 months. And what we find common in Oahu is we've been in a seller's market for so long in most areas that, and that's also why, by the way, you don't see things like buyers getting credit for closing costs, which is very common. So the other thing too is if you're dealing with the buyer, maybe it's a military relocation or somebody that's bought or sold on the mainland and is here now. If you don't have a buyer consultation to educate them and tell them what to expect in this market, what I've come across many times is people will say, oh yeah, so I want the seller to pay my points and I'm going to offer whatever less than asking. If they don't know, because you didn't educate them as to what to expect, you're setting them up for failure. And if they write a couple of offers like that and clearly they won't get something accepted, they're going to either think that that's your fault, or they're just going to say, well, you know what, I'll just rent. So it's really important to understand, is it a seller's market? Is it a buyer's market? In what specific areas? And we're going to show you a couple of tools that you can use to determine this, not only in zip code or MLS market or county, but you can even hyper focus into a building if it's a condo or a neighborhood. Like Makakilo. Makakilo is not a real city, but it's a neighborhood. You can hyper focus on a neighborhood too. So super important to know. Interest rates. Interest rates are at an all-time low. I don't know how many of you have refinanced, but 2020 was a good time to refinance. It's still a good time to refinance if you can save money. Rates are so low right now. So here's kind of the flow of rates. 2019 was, you know, I won't say high, but 4.8% was the highest that it went in the fourth quarter. And then it dipped down where it is right now to in the threes. They anticipate, they always say projected, who knows what can happen. There's so many economic indicators with the bond yield and in the mortgage market. It kind of ties into, but not directly, with stocks and mortgage-backed securities. So there's a lot of economic indicators that can cause this to move, but it's really important for agents not to know. You're not loan officers. Nobody is expecting you to know from that perspective, but you should know that there is a correlation, and you should kind of keep an ear to the pavement as to, are rates up or down and what they are. You don't want to make quotes. You're not licensed to do mortgages, but you should be educated in how you're properly consulting your clients. National economy. I thought this one was pretty interesting. In the United States, total spending by all consumers as compared to basically a year ago. So groceries, as you can see, didn't miss a beat, but transportation, because everyone was working at home, was down. Arts and entertainment was down. Restaurants and hotels. This is nationally, but man, could you imagine for Hawaii that we just took a beating on that? Healthcare was down mostly because in the beginning, especially as you can tell there, March, April, May was when you couldn't really go to a doctor unless you had a serious concern. So that was down. Apparel in general was down. Everyone was kind of walking around their house pantsless with new stretchy tops and just going to work in their underwear because they were on Zoom. But that's interesting to know in terms of that. And then I'm going to dive into InfoSparks. How many of you guys are using InfoSparks? Do you guys know what this is? Great. I know, of course I know Lisa's using it. Is anyone else use InfoSparks or know what it is? Tony and I are going to get into to this right now. Can you guys see my screen on InfoSparks? Okay, cool. So what InfoSparks is the data and the reporting for the MLS. And I don't know about you guys, but I would say Tony as well, definitely me. I'm kind of a data nerd, a numbers nerd. I always like to see what's going on and how you can have a conversation with someone to set yourself up as an agent, as a sales agent, and to set them up, whether they're buying or selling, for success. Your chances go through the roof when you have data to support all that you're trying to help them accomplish. And so what this is this is a tool that's found here, by the way. You guys all see your dashboard. You guys click here normally to get to the MLS. I can tell you one thing. I've spoken to so many agents that say they don't even look at any of these other buttons. They log in and they click right on MLS and they don't even know these other things exist. But this is what InfoSparks is. It's right here. So definitely use it, learn it. It's pretty simple. Tony and I were just going to run through as to what things mean and so forth. So Tony and I typically like to use averages versus medians. It kind of gives a better representation. You can click all property types. I would recommend either clicking single family and condo or single family or condo. The reason is unless you have a client that's looking for business multifamily lots and rental, it's going to bulk these things in there. But you kind of set what you're looking for. So if you're looking for average single family home, and then you can do a 3-year trend, you can do a 1 year. We're kind of looking at 1 year just to see what's going on. You can have the data rolling 12 months, quarterly, or even monthly. And the average home sale price, if you hover your mouse over it, you can see what it is. So it's 1.139 versus what it was in September versus what it was in June. Huge differences. And then you can get hyper-focused. We're talking about getting hyper-focused in a certain area. If you click on here, it says add area. You can add an area that is a building, a zip code, a county. So you can really get hyper-focused. But Tony, what are some of the things that we should discuss on InfoSparks that might help them be successful to what to look
for? Well, the thing about InfoSparks is what I like about it is that you can drill down to different neighborhoods. Yesterday or Saturday when we met, when we were going through the information, is that, it's a tight market, but it's not a tight market for all areas or price ranges. And what we took a look at was, if you have somebody coming in that is looking for single family homes in a certain area, a certain price point, they may not be on the market for more than, 48 hours. You can take a look at condos in town that are, I think the price was under 375, Chad, for like 1 bedrooms and studios. Yeah. There's a lot of inventory. So the number of days on market has increased. And then, you start taking a look at, okay, well, who buys a 1 bedroom condo or a studio for that price range? It's people that are in the service industry. So if you have people that are working in restaurants, people that are working in hotels and don't have a job, that inventory is going to be sitting. So when you get a new client and says, okay, well, where can I get the best deal, or what's the best thing to buy? You start going into InfoSparks and you can kind of tell them, these are the areas that you should concentrate. These are the price points. Aside from taking a look at InfoSparks, I like to also, Chad, if you can go back for just a brief moment to I think it was like MLS, like when you pull up to MLS. Yeah, like if you go into core matrix. Because like Chad said, we're both data guys. And so I'm on MLS like all the time. So for me, if I take a look at on any given day, what the new listings are, the new sales, the new in escrows, I can kind of track. You can track like how many new listings came up in the last 24-hour period, how many new sales, so on and so forth. And then you can kind of gauge like, okay, well, there's like 48 new listings came on the market today, and only 4 went into escrow in the last 24 hours. And so you start tracking all that information. You start tracking, okay, price reduction. So if you take a look at any given day, right now, you'll see a lot of price reductions. But if you click on price decreases, you're going to notice that most of them are rentals. So, except for today, but most of them will be rentals. So you really have to know the market, at any given time, so you can diligently speak to your clients about that. One of the things for me is that I happen to deal in a wide range of price ranges, different areas. So, if somebody says to me, how's the market doing in the $3.2 million range, I'm going to tell them that at 3.2 in Kahala, it's kind of sitting. You go in Kahala under 3 million, you're probably looking at selling in 14 to 30 days. If you start getting about 4 million, you're probably going to sit there for a long period of time. Same thing on the North Shore. So there are pockets of the market that move really, really quickly, and there are pockets that just kind of sit there. And so in the InfoSparks, you can kind of gain knowledge for, like, you can go 3 months, you can go to last, month, you can go to last 10 years or whatever. But it's really good to know what the market has been doing, not just today, but where it's been in the past. And then you can start noticing trends.
And one of the takeaways that I just heard Tony say, for anyone of you guys who work with investors, whether it's just an investor that's buying one or two, or maybe someone who's trying to flip or what have you, one of the things that Tony just mentioned in his search for all this data is that we almost have two different markets that are happening right now. There's a segment of the market that's townhomes and condos that isn't as strong as in single family, and there's a couple of reasons for that, which I'll talk about in a moment. But you might be able to find a great deal if you have an investor that says, "Hey, find me a great deal." You might be able to find a great deal. Right now we're kind of trained to think, "Oh my gosh, I have to offer over asking on everything," and that's true if you're buying probably a single family home that's priced relatively at market or thereabouts at 5, 6, 7, 8, 900, even $1 million in some other areas. You're going to get multiple offers, and it might be on the market for an hour or two before you're already receiving some of those offers sight unseen and the whole thing. But not necessarily for studios, not necessarily for one bedrooms. These are still potential for investors and an opportunity for them to make money depending on what their goals and priorities are. And having that good buyer consultation, that thorough buyer consultation to understand what they're trying to do and their objective helps, because if you understand that they're looking for maybe cash flow, or they want a deal that they know that this is an appreciation state and they want a deal that they can hang on to and rent it out for 5 to 7 years and then make money not only on a cash flow basis, but more importantly on equity and appreciation, that might be that segment, that might be that spot for you to look at using a tool like this to find out what area is lagging. Maybe it's a price point, maybe it's a building, maybe it's a certain area that might be lagging. And how great would that be for you when you're having that discussion with an investor to say, "I've already done my research in this area or this building, and all these lists that you have created." And by the way, these lists are great to even bring to an open house. Make one for yourself. Don't bring copies to hand out to anyone, but have one for yourself so that you can have a talking point at an open house to say, "These are lists of properties that I've already researched that are priced under market value, or might be able to be negotiated under asking price because they've sat on the market long, or whatever the case is." So those kind of tools will be super helpful for you guys. The reason why I say don't make copies of it is you don't want to hand out copies and just make their life easier with maybe another agent or on their own. But what you want to do is say, "This is my only copy. But if you put down your name, phone number, and your email address, I'll be happy to email this information over to you." And if they've already filled it out, one thing that you'll notice is they'll probably grab that form again and go, "Can I just give you a different email address? The one I gave you before was my fake email," or whatever it is. But you want to make sure that you can get that information so you can do business with them and capture their information. So going real quick through some of InfoSparks, I'm receiving a couple of direct messages from people. We've already had a training on InfoSparks. I'm going over it again because this is the information that I typically use when I'm always looking at what's happening in the market, or I'm doing a buyer consultation or a listing presentation. This is some of that data that we get from there, but we will absolutely have the MLS guys give a full training on how to use it, but it is pretty cut and dry. It seems like a lot, but it really isn't. You're just gonna pick, is it single family or condo or both that you're looking at, price points that you're looking at. I always, unless you have your clients looking for leasehold, I always pick fee simple to separate that out. This one depends on kind of, again, what you're trying to run and look for. But let's go through this. So sales price is pretty cut and dry as to what the average sales price or median, you can choose which. Again, you guys are asking some questions. We'll answer some of them in a second here too, but we typically use average. The new listings are the quantity of new listings that are coming to market. This is also an important number to look at here as well, which is the percentage of it going up or going down in that segment. So again, I just have single family chosen, and all price points or all price ranges, as well as fee simple. There's nothing else that's selected. This is just for the example of kind of flowing through what these different tabs are and how they're helpful to you. But hovering over them, super helpful because it tells you where those changes may occur. You can do it line or bar. Bar to me is very confusing. It doesn't really do much. I'd rather look at the line so I can see how everything's broken up. You can run it historically. So, you know, if you're dealing with a buyer, you might look at 1 or 3 years. You're dealing with a seller, you might look at a longer stretch just to kind of give them an idea of what's happening. You can look at max, which this only goes back to 2005. So you can break it up in a number of different ways. The average and how it's being accumulated will add up either rolling 3 months, 6, yearly, or monthly. These are the total homes for sale. As you can tell, this number is down. That number is down, obviously, because we have a lack of inventory. The pending sales are ones that are currently in escrow. So there's a slight fluctuation over the last year, but that's all ones that went into escrow. These are closed sales, pretty self-explanatory. Days on market. So you can kind of follow this trend too. By the way, you know, our market specifically on Oahu, Maui's market, Kauai's market, Molokai, Big Island, different markets. Not really to be compared with Oahu, but Oahu's market is always pretty robust, pretty strong, especially compared to the mainland. There are some parts of the mainland that the average days on market is like well over 90 to 120 days, which is in their market is considered normal. One of the things that we have here, which is a huge benefit, is we don't have space to build. We don't have land. And I've said this before in a number of different classes, but if you're in a market or you're in an area like Nevada, Arizona, Texas, Florida, where you can build for as far as your eye can see, the value of that home is only going to be so much for the most part, unless you're getting into an area like Northern California, which it's so densely populated in the San Francisco or Bay Area, Silicon Valley, that they're dealing with the same thing that we're dealing with, which is lack of space to build. But in other areas, the value of that, you know, is not going to go up too much. Whereas us, every single home or land that you can build on for the most part is pretty accounted for. And not to mention, we also have at any given point 40,000 active duty troops as we represent all branches of the military. Those are very, very helpful things for our local real estate market and economy, be it the purchase and sale of properties, but also renting properties too. So one of the things that I often like to look at is what the average days on market is. So this gives you an indication of what that looks like. Again, so if I'm having a buyer consultation with someone, I may start off with, and they're looking for a single family home and they just want to see what's going on in the area. I might start with this conversation and say, okay guys, so average days on market right now is 35 days. Now, I would say that the reason why that number might seem high to some people is there are some areas that's pulling that number up. Maybe it's overpriced, maybe it's luxury homes, maybe it's homes that are on the countryside, Makaha area, Hauula area, whatever it is that's pulling that number up. But there are also equally areas that might have been on the market for 2 or 3 days. Which is why it's important then to get hyper focused and go, okay, well, let's look at single family homes in this price range, in whatever zip code, and then you can see kind of the difference of what this zip code is pulling in that price point. Sorry, let me change this price point here. In this price point, which is 17 days versus the MLS at 42 days in that price point. So you can get real hyper focused as to what everything looks like and what it means to them, depending if you're dealing with a buyer, or you're dealing with a seller, and so forth. Gosh, what happened here? Somebody in Kapolei overpriced their home is what that looks like. So the days on market is super helpful, because have you guys ever dealt with a client that they're not familiar with the market here, and they're like, oh, this listing just came out, they want whatever 800,000, let's go ahead and offer 750, and you're like, huh? Obviously you got to do comps, you got to do some research, but if the property has been on the market for a short period of time, I mean, think about it. If you're a seller and you just put the home on the market, are you likely to take a discounted offer? Probably not. You probably need to sit in your own, I hate to say it, but your own disappointment of not having offers before you kind of come to the realization that maybe I should lower the price a little bit, or maybe I should make a price adjustment, or what have you. Which, by the way, if you're a listing agent and you have listings, you should be having normal maybe, every couple of weeks, having that conversation with sellers to have a price reduction if there's no momentum. But these are things that are helpful to understand what the days on market is. It's probably not until 40 to 45 days in our market right now on Oahu that it's realistic to assume that somebody might consider or entertain a price less than asking. But again, you got to do your research and comp things out. Months of supply, the months of inventory as it correlated to the slide that we had previous is important to understand, because that kind of determines whether you're in a seller's market, a neutral market, a buyer's market. And as you can see, and this is just using all areas, single family properties that are in this price point, fee simple, months of inventory is 0.4. So that's really aggressive. That's ultra aggressive seller's market. That's 2.6 for townhomes and condos. Obviously, as we talked about before, it's much higher than the single family. And some of the reason too, this is my personal thought process, and Tony, you can chime in too, but my thought process as to why single families are moving much more than condos is now becomes the people have greater purchasing power as a result of the lower interest rate. But also, if somebody was able to, if they qualified a year and a half ago, they qualified for a $650,000, maybe $700,000 single family home. Now they qualify for an $800,000 home because of where the rates are right now. And if you guys kind of look and see what's available in those two price points a year ago, that's two entirely different homes. One, you're looking at maybe a nicer townhome, and then the other, you're looking at a single family home that might be quite decent in some areas. So people have kind of changed their focus to their purchasing power, because eliminating that huge HOA maintenance fee, they can kind of get into a single family home. What do you think, Tony?
That's part of it. And I also think that part of it has to do with VA having no loan limits. I think it was like Sean Sonota that just sold a property in Hawaii Kai, in Port Lock area, for 3.2 to a VA buyer. Now, I'm not really sure what kind of income they made, but the fact that they could get 100% financing for $3.2 million, it changes the landscape of everything. So while you have a lot of VA buyers that are, husband and wife are both military officers, they can qualify for a lot more than they used to in the past, and they don't have to worry about down payment. So that used to be a restriction for most of them before, but it's not any longer. And
there's no PMI, private mortgage insurance, for VA. And interest rates are generally better for VA than it is for conventional.
2.25 for anything on the 765, and I think 2.6 jumbo loan.
That's unbelievable.
That's crazy.
That's such cheap money. So that's a great point, Tony. That's a huge help. So months of supply, super helpful. Again, whether you're dealing with a buyer or seller, this is really helpful information to understand how the market is moving, and then be hyper focused and being an expert at the area in which you're servicing them. So it could be a building, it could be a community, a neighborhood, it could be a specific type of property, but super helpful. The other one that I find really helpful, this is just one of my little idiosyncrasies on what I look for, but sales price to list price ratio is really important. So here's how this works. Here's how this number matters or is meaningful in any way to you guys. Is, let's just say that on average that someone's listing a home at 100,000, which is a parking lot here, but for sake of an easy example, 100,000, and on average in that area, however you're running this report, they're getting 97,000. That's a 97% sales price to list price ratio. Why that's important for you to know is, from a historical perspective, depending on how you're running this monthly, annually, in different segments, that if you're representing the buyer, that there is, in this example, it's 97%, so there's a 3% room for negotiation. On average, it doesn't mean for that specific home, especially if it's priced well, but it gives you an idea of what's happening in that area. Likewise, if you ran numbers and you saw that in this particular area, it was 103%, that means that no one is offering less than asking, or even asking, that they're likely competing with one another to win that offer. So if you're dealing with a buyer, that's super, super helpful to understand, as well as when you go to a listing presentation, to understand what the sales price to list price ratio is too, so that when the seller goes, I think my home is worth X, and then not only do you comp it out, but also you're looking at the sales price to list price ratio to see, hey, on average, they're getting 97%. That conversation with the seller that you're having to say, here's what the comps are, and in addition to that, this is what the sales price to list price ratio looks like. Tony, want to add anything to that as I kind of pull up some examples up for us?
No, I don't.
So this is like,
that we looked at yesterday, the list to price ratio was pretty high, and in some cases, I think there were some areas where everything was over.
Oh yeah.
100.
Yeah. There's some areas, I don't remember what area we were looking at the other day, but it was definitely in single family, it was not in condo. And the single family, some of them were like 104%. So if it's 104%, that means that people are overpaying the asking price by 4%. So, you know that area is super hot. And if that's an area that you have that a buyer is looking, by prepping them in that buyer consultation ahead of time to what that landscape looks like, and it's almost like you're preparing to go to war. Like, you want to have this conversation, like, we're going to write this many offers, we got to be aggressive with our offers, and this is how we're going to strategize. And then you can talk about some of the contingencies. And there's a great class called Strategies of a Purchase Contract that Tony and I have written, that is really, really good for that kind of stuff. But you can have that conversation in the buyer consultation with your client on how to strategize in an area that might have over 100% sales price to list price ratio. There's another thing too. You guys have my TMO report that I send out. It comes out twice a week. I'm sorry,
Yes.
twice a month. It stands for Total Market Overview. It's a custom report for KW that I put together by putting all of this information onto a spreadsheet. And what it's doing is, you see how this breaks down in different ranges from 372,999 or less, and 373 to 587. The TMO report breaks it down in $50,000 increments, so it's much smaller. And the reason it does that is you can really segment the market on what the inventory is, what the sales price to list price ratio are, days on market are, in that $50,000 segment. And I've also, per the request of Jerry Adamani, created one for luxury. So luxury is at higher price points in certain luxury areas. I think Adrian and Attila are on here too. They've used the TMO successfully to either secure or gain some new listings and what have you. So it's really, really helpful information. But one thing that I wanted to point out about that is there's two types of sales price to list price ratio, just so you guys know. There's this when they're talking right here about sales price to list price, what they're referring to is the current MLS list price and then what it closed at. But there's another stat which I include on the TMO, which is not included in this report, and it's called original sales price to list price. And the reason why that's also helpful is that same example I gave to you before of 100,000 and they got 97,000. Well, what if they first listed at 150,000 and then they lowered it to 140 and then they lowered it to 130 because it sat on the market this whole time, and then they lowered it to 100 and then they got 97. So there's really two different data points. It's not a right or wrong and you should use this one and ignore this one, but it is helpful for you to know both on what's going on. But what this is referring to here is the current list price versus that actual sales price, not the original, which is a different report that MLS doesn't really make that easy to find necessarily, but we have it on the TMO side. So there's two columns where it shows both. But that's the difference between the two. So it's super important to understand both. Price per square foot, helpful information in some areas, kind of depends. I think that a lot of times a lot of agents will misuse this information, and they'll just go, if they're in an area and they're trying to price out a property, they'll just go, well, this one sold for X, so this is the price per square foot, and therefore now this is my comp. It doesn't really work like that, and that it's not that simple, but it is helpful information to know. Dollar volume of closed sales. So as you can see, oh my goodness, it's up 81%, which is crazy. Average showings to pending. So this information, use it or don't use it, this is coming from, it's gathered from Showing Time being that application that helps arrange and schedule appointments for your showings through Showing Time. This is their data that they're coming up with, that how many average showings it takes to get from an actual listing into escrow, and then their data showings per listing. So how many showings in total for every listing that they're getting, which they're saying it's up of 136%. So, you know, the accuracy of this is relative. Some people don't use Showing Time. I think Showing Time's use has gone up tremendously since the pandemic, because people were trying to control and monitor who's coming in and going out of a property. As you should be keeping track of all these kind of things for safety reasons, and not only from the pandemic, but also it's your responsibility to watch and monitor the property. So this is super helpful in that. But these two last data points here are coming from Showing Time. It doesn't mean that's what it is for the entire MLS. So again, just bear in mind, it's relative. I don't know the usage rate of Showing Time for all licensed agents. I'm not sure, but I use probably most of these things with the exception of these two. And then Ryan's asking a question, is there comp information? Ryan, comping is kind of, I guess half skill, half science, or art and science. That's a different thing altogether. This is not for that to comp. You have to understand the property, run some scenarios based upon location, and that's a different thing altogether. We should probably have a class just on that, but unfortunately there's no tool that just will automatically comp things for you. I don't know if this is helpful, but this information, I love this information. Like I said, you can be super hyper focused on the area, the neighborhood, the building, the community, and so forth. Tony, before we move on to a couple of other slides, is there anything else that you wanted to say about this stuff?
I think one of the things that you and I looked at over the weekend was this was especially helpful in condos. I think we took a look at a couple of buildings, one of them being, you know, if you're going to be talking about what the market has appreciated over the last year, you want to make sure that you're not going to put somebody in the building that has been depreciating for the last 12 months or so. And I think that one of the buildings that we took a look at was Mount Terrace in Hawaii Kai.
And you know, being an expert in your local area is super important, to Tony's point. But Mount Terrace, if you don't know, is they have a lien on their, I think they did it last year, Tony, is that right? They have a lien on their that they've distributed to all sellers or all owners of upwards of $100,000.
Yeah, it's been in the works for the last couple of years, but last year they got hit really hard. So I think that you can buy a 2-bedroom in there for under 500 now, like way under 500.
When in fact, I think the height of it was selling for.
They're over 6. Go to close sales.
Oh, that's the volume. Hold on.
Yeah, look at Mount Terrace.
And Mount Terrace, by the way, if you guys don't know, I mean, while it's an older building, it is absolutely a luxury building. I mean, it's really nice, well taken care of, and everything else. But a combination, I think, of the pandemic, combination of that unbelievably large assessment that they put on their owners, all those kind of things matter. So when people are looking, and that's the only building in that immediate, you know, area like that. So it's super important if you're consulting with a client that's looking for either buying or selling something, to pull it up and do some research on that specific area or building. What else, Tony, do you want to add?
You know, people looking at condos in the condo market, they're not really necessarily, I mean, looking at price point is one thing, but have to look at their overall total payments, maintenance fees, property taxes, are there any monthly assessments in effect are coming up? Because if you have somebody that's qualifying for $2,000 or $3,000 a month, what does that look like once you back out the maintenance fees, once you back out property taxes, all the other costs that are incurred? That kind of leaves you what they can afford, you know, for a mortgage. You know, some buildings, you know, around the corner from here, they don't come with monthly parking for free. You got to pay like $325 a month.
but you got to be an expert be hyper focused in the local area that you're trying to service too. So this is and you guys might be new agents or newer agents. It doesn't mean that you can't be super informative and super knowledgeable. One of the things that I always say too is being a successful real estate agent isn't always just the number of transactions that you do or the volume that you do. It's how you service your client, because we're licensed. And the reason why we're licensed is we have a fiduciary responsibility to protect our clients' interest above our own. And if I had to break it down by a percentage, I think the salesmanship portion of our business gets way too much credit. The salesmanship probably accounts for 15% of what you're doing. The remaining 85% is how you're going to handle escrow and how you're going to ensure that you're reading the contract and helping protect your clients and so forth. You can only, the people that are ultra salesy in our industry are the ones that are typically in our monthly bulletins, because they're getting fined for one reason or another. So make sure that you also be professional. And not only are all you guys professional, you're clearly here learning and growing your skill set, but also make sure that you're looking at these kinds of things so that you can be educated before walking in blindly to a client and discussing with them. Tony, anything else that you wanted to add about InfoSparks?
No, other than it's a great tool. And,
Awesome.
when you have some free time, just really go in there and play around with it. I'm not that versed in it. I'm a little bit more versed now that, Chad and I had a session together on Saturday, and it's a great tool, especially if you want to be an expert when you're sitting down in front of your clients. And it's even good because if you happen to have a face-to-face meeting, or you can do something on Zoom like today, you can walk them through the entire process. Because somebody came in the office yesterday and said, "Oh, I'm driving out to Market Keel to show property, but my buyers never get anything." And I was like, well, is that because you're writing bad offers in comparison to what asking prices are? Because I sign contracts with people, and when I see a contract that comes in 10% less than the asking price, especially in today's market, maybe the buyer's not that serious.
Those are great points. And when I sit, everyone has a different approach. So I don't want to change necessarily your style or what you're doing or what have you, but how we consult with our clients might range or might differ from agent to agent. And one of the approaches that I take personally, if you're not having some success or you want to kind of change it up a little bit, is I take a very consultative, educational approach when I sit down with a client. And I can tell you with confidence that when I do that and I have that approach, it's very few and far between that I lose a client in any way. Typically, even if I'm competing with other agents, and it's not because I'm selling them on anything. I'm not talking about myself. I'm not talking about all the great things that I can do or have done. I'm talking about them. I'm making them the hero of the story. But in addition to that, I'm talking about the information and the data, because most agents don't. Most agents come in there and they'll just go, "I'm the greatest because I did this and I have this award and I have that." And versus coming in going, "I want to understand more about your goals and priorities, about your wonderful home that you're trying to sell. And by the way, I pulled up all this information. Let's talk about what's going on in the neighborhood." And when you dive in a different consultative educational approach, they hear you. I think it resonates because it's a connection specifically to them and their home if it's a seller, or their future home if it's a buyer. So something to keep in mind. Just come from contribution, like we always say, but come from a consultative educational approach. Moving on to this is local numbers. So housing hardship index. This is kind of crazy. So looking forward into what can we expect in 2021, who knows? We don't have a crystal ball, but I personally think that, if you don't know much about distressed properties, foreclosures, short sales, it's probably a great opportunity to get a little bit more familiar with it. I'm probably going to put a class together on it. If you have never done one before, and let's say that you wanted to work with if you have a buyer or a seller, don't learn on the job. This is not that kind of, you're a licensee. That's one way to get sued. That's one way to get fined, to lose your license. There are a good handful of agents here that can absolutely work with you as a co-agent. So don't learn on the job. Raise your hand and ask for help. Go through the motions at least once or twice and feel comfortable. We have a mentorship program. We have a coaching program. You have me here available, and Tony and Jen. So we're all here to help. as well. But as it relates to what's happening in 2021, 5 state housing markets hit hardest by coronavirus. If you read that little section, Hawaii, tourism dependent state, Hawaii's economy has recovered in fits and starts since April. But if you notice on the housing hardship index, it was 23, which is, I don't even know how that index comes about, but it's ranking, it's accumulating a few different reports altogether, but nonetheless, it was the highest of all states. So some of the experts, I think on this next slide here, hardship index 23, unemployment again was also the topped in the country at 15.1%, likely because of tourism and service. I think they said nationally over 100,000 restaurants closed. I don't even know what the number is for small businesses in total, but I know at one point, I want to say we're only like 2 or 3 months into the pandemic. This is still in the summertime, and we already had well over 1,000 restaurants shut down that weren't going to reopen. So I don't know what it is locally here now, but unemployment 15.1%, delinquency, that's mortgage delinquencies, 7.9%. And then as of September, at least, that rank was number 1. So sky's not falling, but at the same time, you can't sugarcoat things. This is what it is. And personally, I will tell you, now I'm an expert in distressed property, short sales, foreclosures, and that sort of thing. The reason why I became an expert in that is because when the mortgage meltdown happened, I pivoted quickly. I had to pivot. I had to learn new things. And if I didn't, I would have been a statistic of one of the other, handful of agents that just left the industry altogether and did something entirely different. So the lessons to be learned going forward is, while it's not the same thing that happened in the mortgage meltdown, there's always a thing, whether it's the Japanese buying up properties, as it happened in the 80s, or the mortgage meltdown that happened in the early 2000s, or what's happening right now being a pandemic. There's always something that kind of pushes you over a cliff, but you have to learn how to pivot. And so if there is trust me, real estate's not going away. Real estate, we've done huge numbers, record numbers as a company. So it is good, but you can't sit still and do what every other agent is doing. You have to reinvent yourself. You have to learn new skill sets. Doesn't mean you're changing up and not, helping buyers or not helping sellers, but you got to take on additional information. So if you need any help with that, we have an unbelievable staff of people that can help you, whether it's the BICs or the coaches or the mentors. So please reach out. But knowing this information, you don't want to walk into anything blindly. You just want to understand and kind of grow from that. Local number, it's more information on some of that stuff. Tony pointed this out, which I thought was interesting. So you can read it on screen, but we'll read it together. States experiencing high unemployment will see mortgage delinquencies surge if unemployment remains elevated as forbearance periods expire, which makes sense. That's common sense, right? This year may see the worst for unemployment, but 2021 will likely bring the worst for mortgage delinquency and defaults, which is what I was mentioning before, that if you don't know about foreclosures or short sales, not to say we don't wish that upon anyone, but you might want to start prepping yourself for what that looks like, what that means, how to navigate through that. For now, foreclosures are historically low, which is fantastic. And by the way, you don't know the other government intervention that might come about too, but usually government intervention lasts for only so long before it kind of goes away or runs out, and that's when things start to surface.
Can I say something on that?
Of course.
With this pandemic that we got into, I listened to a lot of financial information and podcasts. I listened to a lot of radio shows and whatnot. And the Fed will do whatever it takes to keep the economy, boosted up there to a certain point, unlimited, just sort of like how they did with the financial crisis, back in 2008. There's a backdrop there that we will all depend on. It will stay there. Mortgage rates are not going to go anywhere. As a whole, we'll be okay, but there are pockets, just like anything else, where they're going to hurt. People that are not going to have a job, in the next 6 months to a year. I don't know what's going to happen with that, but overall, I think our economy will be okay.
Awesome, thank you. And then that's it. So before we let you guys go, what questions do you guys have? Lisa, do you want to chime in? Jen, other leaders, do you guys want to chime in with anything?
Yeah, I would love to. Am I unmuted? I am. I'd love to chime in because we've been looking at, especially with the InfoSparks information, and I saw some of the chats about specific buildings. You know, if history is any indication of future, and sometimes things don't play out exactly the way they did in the past, but you can look at some of these buildings like the one you were pointing out, but also take a look at Marco Polo. Take a look at Mott Smith Laniloa. You know, one of the things I always look at with the agents I coach is not only how do you intercept somebody that's looking at buying or selling, but how do you create opportunities, additional opportunities for buying or selling? And knowing what's happening in the marketplace and in these little microcosms of marketplaces can help clients make better investments. Mott Smith is one you can look at that is a disadvantaged building. If you look at what happened after the fire with Marco Polo and then what's happening with prices after the recovery, these are opportunities to either get out of investments or get into investments. I've used these types of tools like InfoSparks, especially on Zoom with sellers in condo buildings, and just walk them through the story of what's going on. And it leads them exactly to where they should or shouldn't price. It's a great tool to prevent overpricing when you can get into really looking at a building over time and maybe if they're all the same or a certain floor plan or a certain size of unit, as long as it lets you search down to that level of detail and there's enough detail, it tells a story. And that's what we do, is we tell stories to help our clients make good decisions.
Awesome, thank you for that tip. That reminded me of something too. So if any of you guys, you know, the market is a little bananas right now where people are outbidding one another, and escalation clauses don't work right now. I mean, everything is relative. Look at the situation on its own, but as a general rule of thumb, put out the best. If you have a property that you're writing an offer on that you think or is anticipated to have multiple offers, don't use an escalation clause. Educate your client as to writing the best and strongest.
Lose you?
No.
We didn't hear Chad.
All right, you can hear me now?
Yeah.
My headset went out for a second. So it's super important to be an expert of the market of the moment, because you want to make sure that you understand what's going on, and an appraisal clause works far better than escalation clause right now as we speak. With that being said, whether you represent a buyer or whether you represent a seller, one of the tools or the strategies that I've used with great success is, let's say that you're represent a seller, and let's say that you have 10 offers, all of which are over asking, because that's kind of the crazy market that we're in right now. And you think in your mind, as you look at comps, you're like, ooh, I don't know how this is going to comp, because the last sale is like maybe $50,000 away from this highest offer that I have that we're accepting. One of the things that I absolutely encourage you to do if you're the listing agent is go to the appointment with the appraiser and provide him a copy of all the offers that you have, because that shows the market. He can't ignore that. It doesn't count as a comp. He's not going to go, oh, great, perfect, I'm just going to, but it absolutely helps, because what the appraiser also does is show the trend of what is happening in the market. You just given him the trend. It's work. I'm not saying that it's going to work if it's well overpriced. If it's $100,000 over everything else, you might have an issue, but you will absolutely reduce the chance of it getting cut to what that comp is, because that's all that he sees, is that public data as a comp. Likewise, if you're on the buy side and you know that there's multiple offers, absolutely ask the listing agent, would you mind please providing that same information to the appraiser to ensure that that you're not going to have an issue. So that's something that is super helpful. And then, can you still see my screen? On my signature cards, on my email, as well as all the staff, we have a link that shows all of our classes upcoming for the week. I highly encourage you guys. Some of it is regional classes, some of it are local classes, but I highly encourage you guys, if you're trying to figure out what our classes are upcoming, you can just save this email address or this website address, and it'll always show what's happening that week. So please stay engaged, because we're happy to help, whether it's little tidbits here, little classes or whatever. Jen, is there anything that you wanted to add?
Sorry, I didn't unmute myself. I think all of this is really great information. I think the InfoSparks is a super powerful tool. So thank you for sharing that. I am hoping to see everyone more frequently as we move forward in this new year. It's going to be a fantastic 2021. We got through 2020. So 2021 is a year of celebration and just to persevere and, you know, to just be thankful for what we have and where we are. And in addition to that, as far as moving forward on conversations, I invite everyone to join us as we continue with more of the training. I really like the deep dive, the drilling down, especially when you look at not just neighborhoods, but with the buildings as well. In the condo market, I think, you know, what's important is not just to see numbers, but to understand the numbers. What's triggering a certain market temperature? Oftentimes, if there is a discrepancy, so like how you, Chad mentioned with Mount Terrace, you know, you may see a trend coming, you know, especially with older buildings. We saw this back in 2009, 2010, when there was a huge surge of plumbing issues with the older buildings, and you saw large assessments as well. So I think these are good topics to communicate on, because the more we educate each other, the more we can gather that data and educate the clients. Because really, like you said, Chad, it's about educating them. What's the best for them, understanding their goals and objectives, but also being able to alert them of not just good opportunities, but of potentials to be forewarned, to say, okay, if you are on a brink of certain financial ability, could a $300 assessment a month trigger that person to go one way or the other? You know, these are the kind of foresights that I think clients appreciate. And it's not just single family homes, but or just condos, but it could be in a single family home or townhome area where we've seen assessments go up as well. So moving forward, I hope to see everyone on these conversations, and, you know, hopefully we'll be able to share more market insights on a more macro level. So thank you for bringing all that information up.
And I don't want to put her on the spot, so I won't put her on the spot, kind of. But Jody Muse is our unbelievable, awesome new coach to our coaching staff. So Jody, do you want to add anything or have any questions?
Thank you, Chad. I was secretly hiding in here, so not really. Just want to say I'm really excited to be back with KW. I love this company, love everything you guys are doing, and you know, it's a true honor to be here. I hope that I can get to know everybody and help all of us just grow our businesses like crazy in 2021. I think it'll be really exciting to take a look at, you know, where we're starting now and then where we're going to finish the years. I just feel this incredible vibe and energy from the company. So yay.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Tony, anything else you want to say before we wrap it up?
I think at any time, if you have questions about the market, particular price points or areas, you know, reach out to some of the agents in the office that work those areas, work those price points. You know, you have a wealth of knowledge within the company. So, you know, go ahead and use them.
Awesome. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. Our first meeting of the month, please put it in your calendar. And by the way, you know, normally we have a lot more people that show up. I'm going to guess they got a little bit of New Year's hangover still rolling over. Call a buddy or two and say, hey, get on this, these calls. These are super important, super educational, super helpful. So reach out to everyone. Let's make sure that the next one that we do has at least double the amount of people that are here. But make it a great day. We're here for you. If there's anything that you guys need, don't hesitate to call, text, or email me or some of the other leadership. And we will see you later. Bye, guys.